So I was asked to begin with an introduction. And I want to do that because I want to give you a little bit of background on my journey to this moment. And it all begins with a story when I was 12 years old. I promise it won't be that long, but the story was when I was 12, I was in a family with a lot of priests and nuns, a very Catholic Irish family. And the people who had the most positive impact on us were actually the priests. And so I decided one night that when I grew up, I was going to be a priest. And the adults in the room were flabbergasted, and they looked at me as if I was crazy, and then informed me that girls in the Catholic Church could not become a priest. And that was the beginning of my long journey to really make a difference in the world by amplifying and accelerating the role of women. This journey has led me to be a Catholic nun and work with phenomenal women leaders. It led me to Harvard, where I studied women's psychological development and found that much of the leadership research was really done by men on men. And I wanted to expand that to understand women. From there, I ran my own company as an entrepreneur at Fine Line. I was an executive leadership person in a Silicon Valley tech company. And last year, I published my book, Lead, and I came back to Harvard to do a pivot in my career. I'm here in a program of folks in their 50s, 60s, 70s who now want to engage full-time in social impact. And for me, that will mean working with women who are engaged in work on climate crisis and trying to amplify and accelerate their work. I tell you all that because I want to give you a framework for how I think about women and leadership. The title of my talk was supposed to be about the imposter syndrome. And I want to start out by saying that is a term that I think is counterproductive. It's counterproductive because it emphasizes what we feel are our weaknesses. It gives rein to our inner critic. And that does not help women to succeed. And so rather than talking about how to change, how to move from being an imposter, I want to start with you. I want to start with your experience as a woman and talk about women and the leadership skills they have and what happens when they get into a role of authority. Rather than talking about feeling like a fraud or how we experience being an imposter, I want to propose that authority is basically, fundamentally, an inside job. And by that, I mean it comes from within your own relationship to yourself. My framework is all about relationships with yourself, with others, and with systems. But at the core, it is about what is your relationship to yourself. This is the area that we have the greatest control. We have control over what we say to ourselves, and how we think about ourselves. This morning, I have this app on my phone that gives me a sort of Zen message every morning. And the one today was very timely. It said, "You are the only one who controls how you think about yourself." And so I want to begin with giving you some thoughts and reflections on how you think about yourself. Now, I want to acknowledge from the start that we are all so different. And I am humbled to be speaking with you, given all that you are dealing with. And I'm just hoping that I have some insights that will be useful. I caught the last part of the previous speaker and how she was saying, we're all here for you, and we are, but you are the ones on the front. You are the ones who are assuming leadership and authority. And I would propose that it's important for you to know yourself. It's important to know what your strengths are. I thought we could take a moment and put in the chat. What do you consider your strength as a leader? What is your, as some people say, what is your superpower? If we could just share that, it's important for us to share it with each other.
I'm super quick and creative and resilient.
Excellent. Those are skills that are needed in your country right now. So as others put in the chat.
Yes, ability to encourage other people and to define common goals, being safe person for others, self-confidence and belief in myself, willingness to support and self-confidence. I can organize people around my ideas, community engagement. I'm a person with creative approach, creativity. Oh, there are a lot of creative ladies over here. I'm able to listen to people close to me. I am a leader. I am loving and caring, bringing ideas to life and empowering women. Energy, communication, creativity.
This is wonderful. It is wonderful to hear that you know your strengths and that they are competencies that you are proud of and that you're able to be there for other people, but you're also able to do things that will make a difference. It is exciting for me as someone who has worked in this field for 25 years to hear your generation naming and claiming your authority. I would encourage you between this month and the next time we meet to think next about what do you want? What is it you want to do with these strengths? What is the role that you want to have? I have found that it's hard for women to really identify what it is you want. But I imagine, given your circumstances where life is so raw and you're living on the edge, it probably becomes much clearer what it is you want to do for others, for your country, for the world as a leader. And we will talk more about that in the next meeting. But I'd ask you to think for a moment, when you thought about imposter syndrome or feeling like a fraud, how does it feel different when you actually are identifying both your strengths and your desires? How does that change your inner dialogue? Does it?
Yes, it gives motivation.
gives motivation, gives encouragement. It gives you the strength to go forward without that inner critic that keeps you from taking steps forward. I love the phrase, name it and claim it. And I want to encourage you, and I feel a little bit like I don't need to encourage you, that you are way ahead in this, to name and claim that passion, that desire, that strength. Why am I saying this? You know, some people will tell you to pitch your strengths as a selling process. And there's value in that. But I have found that for women, being able to say what your passion is, to say what your strength is, to say what your desire is, creates inner confidence in your competence. It strengthens you to go for what you want. Equally important, it enables others to be able to help you. I can tell you a story about when I was working at VMware. There was a woman, a job came open because an executive quit. And I talked to someone who had reported to him and said, "Are you applying for the job?" And she said, "Oh, no, I'm not ready. I don't have this experience. I haven't done that." And I pushed her to consider, did she want this job, and who could she talk to? Who could be her own board of directors to help her move forward to achieve this desire? I think speaking up, speaking to others, and finding strategies to name and claim your passion, your insights. I'm actually quite an introvert. And so when I'm in large group meetings, it can be hard for me to get my comments into the conversation. And one of the strategies, I've developed two strategies. One is one that I find is a big strength for women, which is to prepare in advance, to really go to the meeting knowing what my contribution is. And for me, it helps to speak early, to speak up. In the program I'm in right now, there are a lot of high-powered, very vocal colleagues. And I've found that if I can sit in the front and raise my hand early to speak up and speak out, it makes it all more impactful, easier for me to continue to contribute. And it's just a simple strategy to make myself heard and seen. I want to recognize that what we're talking about in these sessions is hard. I heard that at the tail end of the last talk. That's why I love this picture, because we have this stone wall, and yet this small, beautiful flower is breaking through. It's breaking through because of resilience. And I heard in the chat, individuals saying that is a skill you have. I imagine that is a skill that has been honed over the last year. If you didn't have it a year ago, you must have it now. It's a skill and an attitude that will really move things forward, will enable you to be an effective leader. I like to think of it as having a growth mindset. It's another way of saying not so much how you feel restricted, but how you feel open and empowered, how you can resist the self-silencing voices, and how you can move toward more positive images for yourself, conversation with yourself, understanding. And one small strategy, I'm a great believer in small strategies, things that can be done with very little time, but regularly to build muscles of a different kind. And one of the ones I've developed over the years is what I call catch success. When I'm working with a client or being a mentor, I am always listening for what has gone well, because my experience is that too often we're very conscious of the things that haven't gone well, or maybe we wish had gone differently. But we need to catch success. As Lisa was saying, it's about not being hard on ourselves, but catching those moments. And so at the end of the day, before I go to sleep, I just do a gentle recall of the day, asking myself, where did I do something that made me feel more confident? How often did I beat myself up inside? When did I really accept and be kind to myself? Equally important, I asked myself, where was I successful in touching another person? It may have been being kind to someone on the street, or responding to a request, or reaching out to someone who's lonely, or you can fill in the blank. But really, before I go to sleep, rather than rehashing what will be upsetting, I try to capture what will help me to build on positive reinforcement. I know I keep saying have confidence in your competence. And I'll keep saying it again, because I think that is at the core. But what does it mean? I think it means to hold steady in the moment, to be present in the moment, not rehashing what just happened, and managing the fear about what can come ahead. It's about managing. We never overcome any of our emotions, but we develop strategies to manage them. Finally, I have found that many of the women I've worked with tend to be perfectionistic. They want things done 100%, 150%, way more than is necessary. And I'll often joke and say, if you just cut back to 100%, you would still be ahead of those around you. We can't talk about leadership and authority without addressing power. And I want to offer just a few different angles on considering power. Power, of course, comes with positions of authority, but there are also other kinds of power that we can have, are part of us, or we develop over time. And my favorite is actually Greta Thunberg. Greta has gravitas. Greta has power. But she started out as a student speaking her own truth. And so our own truth can be an avenue and a way to get to power. It can be the power of convincing, the power of connection, the power of caring. I want to be sure to leave some time for questions. So I want to say something about language. Language is very, in my work with women, admittedly in the US, language is very important. And Here, there are two things that may or may not be true in your experience, but I'll offer them nonetheless. The first is to avoid tentative or hypothetical language. And by that, I mean avoid saying, perhaps if maybe I could see if I get the job, then maybe it would work out. All of the maybes and possiblies, we pull our power when we use those expressions. We use those expressions also because we're accustomed to speaking in what researchers call narrative language, which is telling a story. We tend to tell everything that has gone into what we're going to present in order to present it. And in many realms, it's much more important to just get to the message. I think your president is an exquisite example of what I mean about clear, concise, and direct messages that matter. Next time, I'm going to talk about the importance of relationships. And that's largely what this program is built about, around mentors and peers and sponsors. And we'll talk about how they can impact your life. One of the organizations I want to, as I draw to a close, I want to speak about women in authority over other women. In my journey over the last 25 years, as there have been fewer women in authority roles, there have often been issues. There has been competition, and terms have been developed to describe that. But today we're at a new point, and I hear that in your comments. I hear that in your stories. And so the organization that connected me to you, called How Women Lead, has a credo. And they said their credo is, one, to be a fierce advocate for each other. In this country, we talk about the good old boys club, where they take care of each other in many ways. And Julie and her team are saying, be a fierce advocate for each other. Say yes to each other when you're asked to help. Reinforce the voice of another woman in a meeting or an email exchange. Highlight what she has said and be unabashedly visible. Be out there, speak your truth, be seen, be present. Because we all know that we have a responsibility to leave behind a world that's better than it was when we first inhabited it. I'm going to end where I began, with a personal story from my childhood and from 30 years of my life. My mother had a plaque in her kitchen that said, God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. At different moments in my life, I have focused on accepting the things I cannot change. I'll never in my lifetime be a Catholic priest. I'll never run a marathon. There are a lot of things I cannot change. There are a lot of things in the news every night that tear at my heart and make me feel helpless because I cannot change. But at this point in my life, and I would encourage you to think about this part, I focus on having the courage to change the things I can. I won't be able to do carbon capture for the environment, but I can and will empower, accelerate, and amplify other women who are working on climate crisis issues. I want you to join me in having the courage to do what you are called to do, to follow your desire and your strengths to make a difference in the world. The time is now for women to be in charge. You are ready. Look deep inside, listen to your heart, and get out there and lead. Thank you very much for letting me be part of this wonderful program.